Most fearful weapon man has ever made. Ironically, during the Cold War, thousands of missiles pointed at each side helped keep the peace. The threat of mutually assured destruction meant no side would dare strike first. And in the post-Cold War world, nuclear stockpiles were dismantled. The US and Russia eliminated thousands of warheads. But now the US is reversing that. Great power competition is now the main focus of US defense strategy. That means competition with Russia and China in all fields, including nuclear weapons.
What matters in deterrence is what does the adversary think. And in this regard, deterrence is dynamic, and we must recognize that today's deterrent must keep pace with the thinking of today's adversaries or competitors.
The US says that Russia is focusing on developing lower-yield, shorter-range nuclear weapons that could be used on the modern battlefield. The Pentagon argues the US must respond by developing similar weapons. The US has also noted China is modernizing its nuclear arsenal. This new nuclear posture from Washington, the first in 8 years, is being criticized in Moscow and Beijing.
The United States' pursuit to develop low-yield nuclear weapons and lower the threshold for the use of nuclear weapons will increase the risks of using nuclear weapons.
Looking at the distribution of nuclear weapons globally, the US and Russia still possesses the vast majority of weapons. Some nuclear experts say the new US posture is destabilizing and exaggerates the threat, especially from China. The US-based Union of Concerned Scientists issued a report this month saying there is no evidence that nuclear weapons are becoming more prominent in China's military strategy or that China has changed its long-standing no-first-use policy. Chinese military sources emphatically state that China's only security objective with its relatively small nuclear force is to retain the ability to retaliate in the event of a nuclear attack. This modernization of US nuclear weapons won't add to the total number of warheads, says Washington. Instead, by improving its nuclear forces on land, air and sea, the US argues it will deter any power from using these weapons. But critics argue that US President Donald Trump is much more open to using nuclear weapons in conflicts than many of his predecessors. And to change the strategy now makes the use of nuclear weapons more likely, especially against smaller nuclear-armed states like the DPRK. The modernization of the US nuclear arsenal could cost over $1 trillion over the next 30 years, but the cost could be much higher if it increases the likelihood of nuclear war. Nathan King, CGTN, Washington.